All right, then I guess we can start to the lecture. Before we go with our main session, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker first. Okay, so our speaker for today is Associate Professor Dr. Noorminshah Iahad. I'm sorry if I pronounce it incorrectly. So she was graduated from the University of Manchester in 2008. She has supervised master and PhD students in the areas such as health informatics, gamification, e-learning, mobile learning, and computer-supported project-based learning. 9 PhD students and 4 master students have graduated under her supervision. She has led various research projects and won 1 silver medal award at UTM level, one gold award at the national level, and 1 silver medal award at the international level. She is currently the IT manager at the Office of Deputy Vice Chancellor in Research and Innovation. She held the position as the Secretary of Malaysia Association for Information System in 2017 and is a member of IEEE since 2014. Okay, so the time is yours, Professor. You can go on.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Nabila. I like your headphone, pink color headphone. So may I know how much time am I given for the lecture? Like last week, I was given 50 minutes. So how much time am I given the time before the question and answer?
Okay, so for the time is about 60 minutes.
50 minutes, yeah? All right. Okay, good afternoon also. Assalamualaikum, Dr. Ira. I'm glad to be with you again for this semester. Okay, bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good afternoon, everyone. So as far as I know, you are taking the course called Systems Analysis and Design. Am I right? Right? Okay. All right. So today, inshallah, I will share with you on Agile software requirements. Let me share my screen, my PowerPoint slides. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes, Miss.
Okay, thank you. All right. So let's start with the lecture. I'm Noorminshah A.Iahad. Like Nabila mentioned just now, it's usual for people to mention it. My father's name as Lahad is actually Iahad. Okay, it's no problem. So for your information, I'm from the Information Systems Department at Azman Hashim International Business School, UTM. For your information also, I was previously at the School of Computing, UTM, before 2007, from the year 2000 to the year 2017. However, due to some merging of faculties in UTM, so I and my fellow friends from the Information Systems Department decided to move from the School of Computing to the business school, because now the School of Computing is under the Faculty of Engineering. Okay, so we think that we are better at the business school. So we moved to the Azman Hashim International Business School starting in 2017. Okay. So for your information, as mentioned by the chairperson just now, in addition to becoming a lecturer at UTM, I'm also holding an administrative position, which is the IT manager for the Department of Deputy Vice Chancellor Research and Innovation. So if you look at this slide at the bottom, that is my team. Okay, my task basically in general is to plan, manage, and monitor the development of research support systems. Okay, so we develop systems for research management for UTM. My team consists of 5 systems analysts, 1 infrastructure or network engineer, 13 programmers, 2 personnel, okay, who are in charge of documenting the systems, and also we have 1 HR executive. So basically, for your information, these are the systems that we develop and also we manage. There are around 11 systems. Some of them we developed them from scratch. Previously, before 2017, the team developed the systems using Java framework. However, since 2017, 2018 and onwards, we started developing using .NET. So, for example, system number 1, 2, 3, 6, 8, and 10. Those are the systems that we built from scratch. System number 5 and number 4, for example, are open source systems that we customize for the usage of UTM. Okay, so basically these are just some introduction of the systems that we developed. Okay, so for today, I would like to share with you, this will be our journey today, our lecture for today. Number 1 is about software development process. Number 2, why Agile? Okay, so based on my experience with this research computing unit, my team, since 2015, I think Agile is an approach that should be looked into, especially nowadays. There is a need of information systems, and the need for information systems is in a quick manner. People want systems to be developed as fast as possible so that the system can be used. Why? Because with the systems, we can have data. By having data, we can provide many insights. We can provide many visualization, analytics, and so on, and so on. So we can make decisions based on data, or we call it data-driven decisions. Okay, so that's why I am proposing, or I am recommending the need for Agile approach in systems development. Okay, so and the third one, we will look into what is the Agile approach, specifically on getting the requirements in the Agile approach. Okay, so I think in your lecture with Dr. Ira, you have been exposed to various software development process or methodology. For example, what is the most popular ones? The waterfall model. Okay, the waterfall model. So waterfall model was actually proposed in, sorry, there's something, in 1970, which we call it, it's a predictive process. Okay, predictive process. Why do we call it predictive process? Because when we develop system using the waterfall approach, we predict that these are the requirements. Okay, so we get the requirements from users, so we predict, okay, these are the requirements that will be required. Okay, so in 1970s, there's the waterfall approach. Then later on, we have the spiral, rapid application development, and RUP, okay, which is promoting or telling us that in developing systems and iterative processes are needed. We need to do it iteratively, not sequentially, like waterfall model. Okay. Then in around basically, if you look at the timeline around 1980s, so that comes out with the adaptive or agile processes, okay, such as Scrum, Lean, Open, UP, and Kanban, and so on. There are so many methods actually. All right. So and then later on we have enterprise scale, adaptive, Lean, and agile processes. So these are the movements of methodologies from 1970s, and the picture only shows to 2010, but until now, okay, so there are many developments of software development processes. Okay, so this is the most popular one, especially among the undergraduate students. Last week, I gave a lecture with your seniors on enterprise application development. Okay, so I mentioned that for undergraduate projects, it's okay to use the waterfall model, but because the scale of the project is quite small, the scope of the project is quite small. But when it comes to software development for a big enterprise, a big software, so it's not that not that suitable for us to use the waterfall model. Okay, but I'm just giving you an overview. So this is the waterfall model. Okay, so if we look at the waterfall model, as I mentioned earlier just now, it is popular in the 1970s. Okay, so it breaks down software into discrete steps. What does it mean by discrete steps? Meaning each step must be completed before you go to the next step. Okay, so each step has its own activities and tasks. Okay, so the discrete steps are planning, design, development, testing, and implementation. With each step occurring in sequence. Okay, so the keywords are in sequence and with no overlap. Okay, so this linear approach can take a long time to complete projects, often years, and frequently makes it difficult to adapt to changing requirements. So this is one of the major problems. Why? Because you have the requirements at the beginning, and then probably it takes, like for example, 1 year for you to finish developing the system. After 1 year, then only the user will test and realize that there are the requirements are not enough. Okay, so it's difficult for the developer to adapt to the changing requirements. All right. All right. So next, let's look at in general. Okay, in general, as I mentioned just now, there are many software development process or methodology methods. So if you look at this table, we can see when we want to develop a system, we can see which one is probably more suitable for the development. Okay, for example, for number one, if the system is with unclear user requirements, okay, so the agile development is recommended, and also prototyping and system prototyping, okay, iterative. So if you look at the number one criteria, if the requirements are unclear, so it is advisable for us to use the iterative process. Okay, so the iterative process can be iterative like RUP, like the one I mentioned just now, system prototyping, throwaway prototyping, or we can also use agile development. Okay, if we are unfamiliar with technology, so it is advisable to use the throwaway prototyping, and so on. Okay, so if that if the system are complex, it might be good to use waterfall. But this table that I get is from a book which is quite old, because systems analysis and design, there are many books, right? So this one is quite old. This author say that if the system are complex, it's good for you to use waterfall. But with the developments of technologies and so on, if you ask me, if the systems are complex, it is advisable to use the agile methodology. Okay, so later you can look at this table, and then let's look at what are software requirements. Okay, so a requirement is simply a statement of what the system must do, okay, or what characteristics it need to have. Okay, so there are various types. When we learn about software requirements in general, and especially in the waterfall model, using the waterfall model, we have planning, analysis, design, and so on. So when we do the requirements analysis, okay, so there are various types of requirements, or these are the categories of requirements. Number one is business requirements. So basically, when we talk about business requirements, it refers to what this it describes what the business needs. Okay, for example, the business needs a system that will help increase productivity, okay, or will help the users to complete the task in a shorter time, for example. Okay, business requirements. Or the business would like to have an information system that can further decrease costs, okay, for example. So that those are business, a higher level of the requirements of a system. Okay, for the user requirements, it refers to what the users need to do. All right, and then the functional requirements, what the software should do, and then the non-functional requirements, characteristics of the system that should have. All right, so if we look at later, I want you to have a look at this, and then later try to compare with the way we get requirements for the agile in the agile approach. Okay, so this is the first part, whereby the general way we think about requirements. Okay, so if we look at the example, these are example of functional requirements. functional requirements can be process oriented, okay, meaning it refers to the process the system must perform, okay, a process the system must do. Okay, so those are the examples. For example, the system must allow registered customers to review their own order history for the past 3 years. Okay, look at these examples. If you look at these examples, the functional process is basically focusing or referring on what the system should do. Okay, they are referring to what the system should do. So for example, the second one, the system must check incoming customer orders for inventory availability. All right. And functional requirement can also be information oriented. Okay, what does it mean by information oriented? Meaning the information system must contain, for example, order history, must contain real-time inventory. Okay, so in other words, what are the data that the software or the information system will capture? All right. Okay. Then, in addition to functional requirements, we know that there are also non-functional requirements. Okay, for example, performance related to speed. Okay, so for example, the system downloads new status parameters within 5 minutes. The system supports 300 simultaneous users. Okay, so these are related to the performance. And then example of other non-functional requirements are security. Okay, only direct managers can see personnel records, control of who can access what, okay, and so on. So I think you have been exposed to this during your lectures, okay, the non-functional and functional requirements. All right, so next, let's go to next topic of this lecture. So why do we go agile? Why do we need to go agile? Why do we go agile? Okay. All right. What does it mean by agile? Okay. Agile in this definition is, I got it from, if you Google search, you will find the same definition. Okay. Agile means able to move quickly and easily. Okay. Quickly and easily. So in another, in the systems development definition, according to this online dictionary, it refers to relating to or denoting a method of project management used especially for software development that is characterized by the division of tasks into short phases of work and frequent reassessment, okay, and adaptation of plans. So in general, if we talk about agile in the software development process, it actually refers to project management process. Okay, it's a project management process. But in agile development, there are various types: Scrum, DevOps, Lean, and so on. So those are sub categories, okay, of agile. In general, agile refers to how you manage the projects. Okay, so later you will see how we manage the projects in the software requirements using the agile approach. Okay. So there's also another definition that you can refer to at the agilealliance.org website, okay, whereby agile is the ability to create and respond to change. It is a way of dealing with and ultimately succeeding in an uncertain and turbulent environment. So if you look at this definition, it not only refers to the ability to respond to change quickly, okay, and easily, and also it refers to a way that you should approach when the condition is uncertain. You are not sure about what will happen, or you are not sure about the functions of the system in detail. Okay. All right. I would like to show these figures, these pictures, to relate to the agile. Since March 2020, we are in the pandemic of COVID-19. Okay, so many things have to change fast. Okay, I'm referring to the definition of agile in general. Many things have to change fast. For example, if you look at AirAsia, air flight company, okay, from providing transportations, flight transportations. So in in November 2020, AirAsia also moved to the food delivery services. Okay, so they have to change quick, they have to change fast in order to ensure that their staff can work, they can give work, they can provide work, jobs to their staff, and so that also AirAsia can still running, although there are no business for flights transportation. Okay, so this example is one of the hotels in Johor Bahru here. It's called Jen Hotel, a very nice hotel, very nice place here. So it has a very nice restaurant, a luxury restaurant. Only, not I don't mean like only rich people. Anybody can come here actually. Okay, but of course the price of food are quite expensive. Why? Because they provide a good service, they provide a good environment, and so on. Yeah. But when it comes to when pandemic came, so what happened was they have to move to street hawkers. Okay, they have to think quickly. So what can we do to ensure that we can make income, we can generate income, we can get money, right? Nobody will come to the hotels, okay, to stay there. So for example, one of the way is they come up with the idea of street hawkers. Okay, so this is a photo that I took myself, I think maybe last month. Okay, so in opposite to this restaurant, whereby probably one plate of mee or noodles which cost about 25 ringgit, normal price in this type of restaurant. So they sell a plate of noodles for only, for example, 7 ringgit. Okay, but they have to change quickly. They have to be agile enough to make sure that they survive. Okay, so this is just an example of agile in a general manner, in a general situation. Okay. Another type of agile, when we talk about software development, okay, remember just now in the definition we say that, for example, it is suitable in a changing environment, turbulent, in a condition that we are not sure. So this is just an example of an app that is developed by the Ministry of Health, Malaysia, when we face with COVID. Okay, so of course this is the latest version. Okay, initially the first version is just like an app to provide you information. An app, if you look at this hotspot, so by clicking this hotspot, you can know in the radius of 1 kilometer how many cases are there. Okay, and to get self-test and to trace, okay, to trace who the close contacts. So this My Sejahtera app is being used. Okay, so in this condition, we need to develop the app in an agile way, in a quick manner. Okay, so for example, last time before we have Malaysia has been doing the vaccination process, I think, for the past 4 or 5 months. Okay, so when we have that, so the ministry started to come out with the functions of whether I'm fully vaccinated or half vaccinated, okay, or partially vaccinated. And then the latest one, when we already have the full vaccination, so we'll have the COVID-19 vaccination digital certificate. Okay, so I just want to show you that this is an example of an app which was developed in a very quick manner because due to the needs of the pandemic situation. Okay. All right, let's look at this waterfall versus agile. Okay, if you look at waterfall, as I mentioned just now, it is a sequence you have which does not overlap. We must finish one phase before going to other phases. Compared to the agile, actually we have a start line and a finish line. Compared to the waterfall model, okay, so we have in the agile model actually, okay, imagine that you have one system, okay, whereby that system you want to develop, we start with planning and then we design, develop, testing and implementation. Okay, so the implementation will happen at the end, whereby the whole system will be given to the users at the end of the system development. Okay, but compared to the agile software development, you actually break the requirements into small pieces, and then each small pieces are developed in phases, in small phases. So for example, this one, in this figure, there are 3 small phases. And for each phase, you actually have planning, design, development, testing, and implementation. Okay, so these are the difference between waterfall and agile method. All right, let's look into the agile approach in detail. Let's go one by one. Okay, remember just now as I showed you the comparison between the waterfall and also the agile method. So in the agile method, we have this this cycle, okay, plan, design, develop, test, and then deploy and review. Each cycle is called a sprint, okay, a sprint. So for example, this one, there are 3 sprints. The main concept of the agile approach is number 1, it is iterative approach to development. So the same as I mentioned just earlier, in 1980s, there is a movement of moving from waterfall to iterative. Okay, so agile refers to is an iterative approach to development. That's number 1. The second concept is the short feedback loops. Okay, what does it by short feedback loops? Meaning we have many cycles, we have many sprints to ensure that the requirements or the needed functions of the users are delivered to the users, okay, and also being tested. Okay, so short feedback loop. So by developing and then delivering to the users, so we can get the feedback as soon as possible. All right. And then number 3, the nature of the agile is it is a disciplined project management process, meaning for each phase or each cycle, there are certain things that we need to follow. Okay. So the nature is deliver incrementally. So we deliver incrementally and instead of all at once. So at once is the nature of the waterfall, and for the agile, we deliver incrementally. Okay, so these are the manifesto of the agile approach. These were developed, these were formulated by 12 influencers of software engineering. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, in 2001. So they gather together and they come out with this agile manifesto. Okay, so in the agile manifesto, these are the 4 core principles, or not principles, these are the core values, okay, that they emphasize. Number 1 is they value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Okay, individuals and interactions are more valuable, or not more valuable, but more important, okay, to be considered, to be looked into compared to processes and tools. Okay. Number 2 is a working software over comprehensive documentation. Okay, so when we work using the agile approach, documentation is less. Okay, less documentation, less detailed documentation, but however, there must be documentation. Yeah. Then number 3 is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Okay, in the waterfall model or waterfall approach, we normally confirm with the users or with our customers the requirements at the beginning. So we close it with a contract, and then we develop, and then we deliver. Okay, but in the agile approach, customer collaboration is very important. So in each sprint, we will work closely with the customers, with the potential users. Okay, and then the next one, responding to change over following a plan. All right, so rather than following the plan rigidly, so we respond to change, we respond to the requirements or the needs of our customers or users. Okay, so these are the 4 core values, okay, in the agile manifesto. The Agile Manifesto contains 12 Agile principles. If you look at these principles, especially, for example, number 1 and number 2. Okay, so our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Okay, so they are putting the value into to the customers. And then number one, if you look at number two, this is one of the core difference between Agile and waterfall. So we welcome changing requirements even late in development. Okay, Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. So in Agile, we we put the users or customers first. Okay, whereby we must make sure that even they provide us the requirements late during the development, we must cater or we must consider the requirements. Okay. And then number three, deliver working software frequently from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, okay, with a preference to the shorter time scale. So for each sprint, normally it takes about 4 to 8 weeks, for example. So that must be defined by the systems analyst, okay, or we call Scrum Master in the Agile environment. Okay. Number four, business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project, and so on. But if you read later, you can look at these principles. But the core, if you read all these principles, the main thing, it actually refers to the four manifesto. What are the four things that they prioritize? Okay, so in these all 12 principles, it shows that the focus is given to the customers, okay, value given to the customers, and also the important is to make sure that the team who is developing the software know what they have to do, and they do their task very well. Okay, so how do we come up with that? I'll tell you afterwards. Okay, there are the processes that make sure that everybody knows what they should do. Okay, so later you can read these 12 Agile principles, and also you can get it from the URL that I mentioned just now, agilealliance.org. Okay. Okay, let's look at the Agile enterprise big picture. So for us to understand the whole idea of the Agile enterprise big picture, or how we develop software, okay, in an agile manner for an enterprise. So there are three levels of the agile development. Okay, if you look at, let's look at the bottom one. Okay, we call it a project level or team level. Okay, the middle one, the program level, is considers or appropriate or relevant for the product managers. Okay, the manager of the project, the system development projects. Let's say I want to develop one system RADIS, for example, RADIS. So RADIS is a research and development information system in UTM that help researchers to manage their research projects. Okay, so RADIS is owned by one unit in UTM called Research Management Center. Okay, so as the owner of the project, they must know what is the feature that they want, there are many modules, so they have to let the team know, let the project know which one is the priority, which one should come next, and so on. Okay, and then the portfolio is the higher level of the unit at the university level, what should be done, and which team should be involved, and so on. Okay, so but my lecture today will be focusing on the lowest level, which is the team or project level, whereby the systems analyst and also system developer, tester, documenter are involved. Okay, look at the one that I have boxed in red dotted lines. Okay, so in this level, the project or team level, if you can see at the very left hand side, we have the agile teams. Okay, so the agile teams, each agile team contains about 3 or 10, typically around 3 or 10 persons, whereby there are product owners. Okay, product owners are the one who own the system or who own the product, who know about the system, that can give the requirements. Okay, agile master, in other words, is also it can also be called the system analyst. Okay, and also we have the tester and coders. Okay, So then you can look at the next thing. We call it story or backlog. Okay, so please keep these phrases, the items in your head. Later we will go into these definitions. What are backlogs? What are stories? Okay, and then from the backlog stories, we have components, features, and so on. Okay, so let's look at what does it mean by stories. And for agile software requirements, stories is the core thing that the Scrum Master or the Agile Master should look into. Okay, normally we call the systems analyst. Yeah, when we want to get the requirements in the Agile software requirements phase, so we should look at stories. Okay, so let's look what does stories means. Okay, before that, just want to introduce you certain items or certain definitions, not certain definitions, certain terms. Okay, so as I showed you, that in the agile development there are various sprints, for example 2 sprints or 3 sprints and so on. There can be many sprints. So for each sprint, for the overall system development, we have the requirements that we call product backlog. Okay, product backlog. So the pink one, the pink boxes represents the product backlogs. Okay, so for each sprint, we select certain backlogs. Okay, so we make a sprint, so we finish up 1 sprint. So let's say we have finished 1 sprint, so we take these backlogs and complete another sprint. Okay, so these are the concepts that I would like to introduce to you. Next, let's look at the definitions. All right, so remember just now we have backlog, okay, and then we have sprint backlogs, and then we have the sprint. Okay, so for each sprint, for example, there can be these are the backlogs. Okay, so we can divide it into teams. Let's say team 1 is sprint 1, team 2 is sprint 2, and team 3 is sprint 3. Okay, so for team 1, we have feature 1, feature 2, feature 3, and we have US. US refers to user stories. Okay, user stories 1 and 2 for feature 1. For feature 2, we have user stories 3 and 4, and so on. So if you look at this, team 1, let's say team 1 is developed, is being used for sprint 1. Okay, so for each user story, there are many tasks. Okay, so I hope you can get this backlog. From the backlog, we have team, and then we have feature, and then we have user stories. From user stories, we have task, or ST refers to subtask. Okay, so this is the hierarchy of things in the agile, in the sprint, in each sprint. Okay, so let's look at one by one. Okay, this is an example of a user story. Okay, so when systems analysts went to see the users or the potential users of an information system to get the requirements. So for example, the user tells this: as a credit card holder, I want to view my statement balance so that I can pay the balance due. So this is an example of a user story. So from this user story, the story is being chunked or divided into smaller pieces to become tasks. Okay, so for example, from this user story, what should be done is first display statement balance upon authentication. Next, display total balance. Next, show payment due date and minimum paid payment due date, and so on. Okay, so I hope you get the idea of what is a user story and task. Okay, so next, let's look at this. What is the definition of a user story? Okay, so a user story is actually a brief statement of the intent that describes something the systems need to do for the user. Okay, so that is a format of a user story. We'll look at the next slide. Okay, so the user story is actually a tool for defining a system's behavior in a way that is understandable to both the developers and the users. Okay, but it must be point of view of the user, not the system. Yeah, not like functional system. The way we write must be the point of view of the user. and then the user story focus the work on the value defined by the user, okay, rather than a functional breakdown structure. This is what I just mentioned just now. And then it provides a lightweight and effective approach to managing requirements for a system. Why? Because as I mentioned just now, from a user story, we can chunk down or we can divide into smaller pieces, so it is more effective to manage, right? Okay, so if you can remember the figure that I showed just now, this one. Okay, so we have backlogs, the pink ones, and we have also sprint backlogs. And then from each, where is my mouse? Okay, sorry. From each user story, you can have multiple tasks or subtasks. Okay. Okay. So if we look at the relationship between story and backlog, okay. So certain backlogs can have many stories. Okay. And each story belongs to a backlog. Okay, so how do you capture the requirements of a user story? The formula is like this. As a role, the role of the user, I can activity, what is the activity that he or she would like to do? Okay, so that business value, so that I get certain business value, right? So for example, as a consumer, okay, so the role is the consumer. I want to able to see my daily energy usage. Okay, that's the activity. So what is the business value or the value to the customer so that I can lower my energy cost and usage. Okay, so this is how we capture the user story. Okay, so then we can divide it into various steps. For example, first log into my web energy monitoring portal and then see my daily energy usage. Then check my current electricity billing rate. Okay, so we start with a user story first, then we come up with the details of the user story. Okay, what are tasks? Just now I showed you that tasks or subtasks are the division of the small chunks of a story. Okay, so one story can be implemented by one or many tasks. Okay, so just give an example, story 25. Okay, there are many stories, so this is story 25. We said the story is select a photo for upload, for example, or the very detailed story is, for example, as a user, I want to upload my photo so that I can get value. Okay, what are the value? Okay, so we chunk it into select a photo for upload, so we can later on divide it into smaller tasks. Okay, so for example, task 25.1, define acceptance test. So remember just now I mentioned that in an agile approach, it is systematic or it's a systematic project management. Okay, so by having this story and then we divide it into tasks, so we can assign each small task to various testers and also coders. So for example, task 25.1, define acceptance test. So I give this to Anis and Mida, for example. Task 25.2, code the story. That's code the story. I give this task to Uni, for example. Task 25.3, get it to pass, meaning the story is tested and it is usable. Okay, so I give it to Sheila, for example. And then task 25.4, document in user help. So I give this task to Nani. So it is a very systematic way and structured way of using catering the user requirements. Okay. Okay. One more thing that is different from the traditional approach of capturing user requirements is this. Okay. Remember just now in the waterfall model, we plan, we design, develop, test, and so on. But in the agile software requirements, these are what we have to do. Okay. What we call the elements of a user story. There are 3 C's. Okay. Card, conversation, and confirmation. For your information, if you have gone through one of the methods in software development process called extreme programming, or XP, okay, extreme programming, this concept is actually introduced by the founder of the extreme programming. Okay, so when we want to, and it has been used in the agile approach. So when we are capturing requirements, these three things must be considered, the three C's. Number one is cut, conversation, and then confirmation. Okay, three things. So number one, cut, I'll show what does it mean. I'll show what is that is meant by cut. What do I want to say just now? Cut, conversation, confirmation. I forgot. It's okay. So when we want to, okay, now I remember. All right. In the agile approach, actually, we capture the requirements. At the same time, we start designing the requirements using the mockup or wireframing method. Okay, so okay, now let's see this. Okay, in capturing the user requirements in the agile approach, we use these three step or three C's method, which is cut, conversation, and confirmation. Okay, number one, when we talk about cut, we actually capture the user stories. Okay, number two is conversation, meaning we get the user stories in detail. And number three, confirmation, is we need to know what are the criteria of acceptance of this particular user story. Okay, so let's look at one by one. Okay, so remember there are three C's: cut, conversation, and confirmation. Okay, let's look at the first one, which is cut. Okay, so why is it meant by cut? Okay, of course, as I mentioned to you just now, this was invented, the three C's was invented during the XP programming in the 1990s. I think 1980s. So that time, to get the requirements, we can use this kind of cards. Have you seen these cards? Anybody have seen this type of cards? Anybody?
Yes, I was.
You saw this card. Okay, thank you. So when I was preparing these slides, I remember I used these cards during my undergraduate studies, 1997, to write my notes, or to for me to remember certain facts on the my lectures and so on. That time, these cards are popular, so that's why they call it card. Okay, so when we capture user requirements from the users, okay, so we use this type of cards, for example, or you can also use these post-it notes. So by using these users, ya Allah, something is flying in front of me. We can use this kind of notes or post-it notes for the users to write down their user stories. Okay, of course, as systems analyst, later, inshallah, when you graduate, you might be a systems analyst, or you might be a tester, you might be a developer. Okay, so of course, as a systems analyst, okay, you should guide them how to write the user story. So we have this kind of post-it notes, for example. So we gather all the user stories. Okay, then all these user stories will become the backlogs. Okay, so in this way, okay, so at the end of the user requirement session, in not only for the agile approach, so we should have something like this. Okay, what is the story name, details of the story, and then the acceptance test. Okay, the acceptance test is related to the third C. Okay, but I just want to show you when we are capturing user requirements specifically on the user stories. So this is the first step. Okay, we get the user requirements, get the user stories as much as possible, and write the details as much as possible. Okay, then the next C is conversation. Okay, to make sure that we understand each story that the user write in the post-it notes or in the cards. So we need to have conversation. Okay, conversation represents a discussion between the team, customer, product owner, and other stakeholders necessary to determine the more detailed behavior. Okay, so we want to more detail. We want to know more details about the behavior, what the system should do to help the user. Okay, so we have a conversation. All right, so basically, this is the second C. Okay, details in discussion between the project owner and the team. All right. So in in ensuring that you have the user knows, or the product owner knows what are you going to develop for them that can create that value for them. One of the way is for you to create the mock-ups. Okay, so the mock-ups can be written or can be done in using paper and pen, okay, and pencil, or paper and pen. So you can draw like this, and in white paper, what we call them in here, we call it mahjong paper, a very big piece of white paper. You can just draw, sketch, and then you can show what are the details of each screen, okay. Or we can also use online tools. Nowadays there are many online tools like this, okay, where we call it wireframing. We do wireframing or mock-up of the system. All right, so when we do the mock-up, these are some of the process that actually my team did. Okay, so what we do is we meet with the product owner, okay, get the user stories, and then we design mock-up using wireframing tools. So this is an example of a mock-up of a screen that we show to our users, okay, and then so we show our mock-up, revise, review, and revise. So it's iterative, okay. We show it, and then we get feedback from them. Remember just now, feedback loops. So we get feedback from them, and then we revise as needed so that it meets their requirements, okay. So this is an example of the usage of one software called Balsamiq. And actually this is also another example of the interface design that we provided in another system developed also by my team, okay. So we can include pictures and so on, yeah. So another way or other types of tools that you may use is this is Balsamiq, the one that my team is using. Okay, there are also other apps that you can use to design, to do the wireframing. For example, proto.io. You can Google search proto.io. Or this is also used. This is an example of a system designed by my PhD student, using mockups. Okay, so there are various types of tools that you can use to do the wireframing so that you can show to the users and product owners. Okay. All right. So next, after the card, whereby you get the user stories, and then the card conversation. Okay, conversation. You get the details of what they need. Okay, and then the third one is the confirmation. Okay, this is one of the difference that we don't have in the waterfall model. Why? Because we do the testing at the end. So in the agile approach, when we define the story, we have the details of the story, and at the same time, we have the acceptance criteria. Okay, so we get the acceptance criteria. We sit down with the users to ensure that they understand for this function that they need, to make sure that this function works as they want. So there are certain acceptance criteria. So let's look at this example. Yeah, the story is, as a consumer, I want to be able to see my daily energy usage so that I can lower my energy cost and usage. So that is the story. Okay. So example of the acceptance criteria. Okay, read decawatt meter data, okay, the meter data every 10 seconds, and display on portal in 15-minute increments, and display on in-home display every read. Okay, so these are examples. Okay, so this story is about reading data so that they can optimize the energy usage, and I can lower my cost. So how do I want to test so that the system really meet my requirements? So these are the acceptance criteria. So in the agile approach, the acceptance criteria is being defined early. Okay, not at the end of the system development. It's being defined early during the requirements. So if you look at this example, this story have 2 acceptance criteria. Okay, so a story, if you look at the figure at the left, a story done. Okay, one story is done, meaning completed, when it passes one or many story acceptance tests. Okay, so the acceptance test is agreed with the users, okay, with the product owners. Okay, so those are the 3Cs. I hope you get the idea about the 3Cs. How do teams manage stories and tasks? These are examples of how you manage the stories and tasks. Remember, we have many stories. So one of the method is using the Kanban method. Okay, Kanban is quite an established method. It's also one of the agile method, whereby you organize your tasks according to certain areas. For example, in this figure, it has various areas, stories, what you need to do, what is in progress, what is being tested and done. So this is, for example, in one sprint. In one sprint, let's say you have all these user stories number 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so what has been done, what is in progress, testing and done. So this one is using a manual way, whereby you put the post-it notes and then you use a whiteboard. Okay, but at the same time, you can have, actually nowadays there are many online tools for the Kanban method. For example, ClickUp, Kanbanize, and Trello, whereby you have these templates for you to organize your work, for the team to organize each sprint, to make sure that the system is being developed in a systematic way, and to ensure that all the team members know where they are at a particular time. Okay, so I think yeah, that's all from me for today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Dr. Noorminshah Iahad, for the inspiring and insightful talk. Okay, now we have reached the Q&A session. So if you have any question, you're allowed to raise them at any minute now. Please kindly either drop the question in Zoom chat box or raise your hand on Zoom to get a chance to ask Dr. Noorminshah herself right away. Okay. It's okay if it's in Indonesian. I'll help to translate it into English. But if you can write it down in English too, it's preferred. Thank you. Okay, Fikri Yoma, you can go ahead, ask your question.
Okay, thank you, I'm Noorminshah for the great lecture for today. And let me introduce myself. My name is Fikri Yoma. I'm from Information Student Airlangga, class of 2020. And my question is, this agile development is is a recycle about the meaning we have iterative run. I relate about the device requirement. So because a new feature in software that we follow that. So now we have Windows 11, right? And we left the Windows 10, and it is that we need a new latest technology to have that requirement, and we left the old technology. Like we have Windows 64 bits for now that, but we still care on 32 bits, and this is relate about recycle is it mean, and so are we left the old technology, or we only rest for the new technology? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, so basically your question is, should we leave the old technology and focus only on the new technology? Is that your question, if I understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and also the device, we still left the device, or we buy new technology, because my old technology is so slow response, and I need to wear a new technology, so I must buy it like that.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think I'm not sure why you asked this question, but I think yeah, you might be someone who is more hardware oriented compared to software oriented. Maybe I'm not sure. I think so. Okay, So if you ask me, because your question is more related to, for example, Windows 10 or versus Windows 11, and then also on new device, old device, okay? So if you ask me, technology change very fast, okay? Technology change very fast. And at certain time, the technology will become obsolete. Okay, the technology will become obsolete, which means we cannot use it anymore. For example, I mentioned to you earlier when I introduced myself just now, my team developed a system since 2010 to 2016 using the Java framework. Okay. However, I'm just smiling because related to old technology, new technology. However, in 2016, we realized that the system is no more secure because the framework is old. Okay, the Java framework is old and it's not secure anymore. Okay, so we used the system since 2010 until about 2017, 2018. Okay, so until that time, we have to decide to change to totally a new system, develop a totally new system and totally a new platform to ensure that the system is being developed is secure, and also to ensure that the system developed is following UTM rules and regulations. Okay, so my point here is it's not that we want to forget the technology, but technology moves too fast and we must follow the technology advances. Okay, so when, for example, you are buying Windows 10 versus Windows 11, so Fikri, at a certain time we cannot do anything. We must follow the flow of technology. Okay, that is related to your question. Okay, about for example, changing of Windows 10 to Windows 11. And then also when we relate to Windows 64-bit and 32 bits. So those are the changes of technologies, okay? So we must follow the flow. It's not much that we can do. But when we talk about agile approach in software development, in developing software, if you ask me, should we follow 100% agile and we leave waterfall approach? I would say no, okay? Certain systems can still be developed using the waterfall approach. Okay, certain systems, as I mentioned just now, if the requirements is not known, if the condition is we want something very fast, like for example the app, my Sejahtera app, in the pandemic situation, we must develop something very quickly. So an agile approach is appropriate. If, for example, for your group project, okay, I'm sure, yeah, Dr. Ira, for the class there will be group projects.
Yes, there will be a group project assignment.
Okay, so for group projects, probably you will be asked to develop a small system, for example, yeah. So it's just a small project. It's just a class project for maybe 2 months. You can still use waterfall. There's no problem. Okay, so not necessarily when there is something new, you leave the old things. Okay, it depends on the situation and it depends on what you are facing. Is it software development or infrastructure or hardware? Okay, so that's my answer, Fikri.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then Fikri Oma, maybe you can stop. Okay. Are there any other question from the
If you want to speak in Bahasa Indonesia also can. I try to understand. I think I can understand, inshallah.
Okay. Okay, next there I see that Radrindra raised his hand. Maybe you can go on and ask your question.
Yes, thank you, MC, for allowing me to ask a question. Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Radrindra Brahma Adipranata. My last student number digit is 057, and I would like to ask Dr. Noorminshah a question. Sorry if my pronunciation is a bit false. So, Doctor, what I've understand from the Agile model is the fact this allows the system to update information almost instantly. Yeah, like for example, you said the COVID app, which updates like the number of people infected by COVID, or maybe the area that is most highly likely to catch COVID, like something like that. Yeah. Okay, so my question is, in your opinion, Professor, how vulnerable is the agile model is to, let's say, human mistake? Like, for example, since the agile model is always constantly updating its information, is it likely that there might be a wrong information that is updated in the system, or maybe because since it's always updating, that the mistake that's maybe inputted at first can be solved instantly like that? Or maybe in your opinion, there's some other factors. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. So you are asking about the vulnerabilities of
Yes.
using the agile approach. Okay, so probably I should correct a bit when you say that the agile approach means that frequent changes of the information. It's not the concept. Okay. I'm just saying, I'm just giving the example of My Sejahtera. In My Sejahtera, the changes of the system itself is very fast. For example, initially we only have one function of tracking or tracing patients or people with COVID-19. Okay, that's number one. Then later on, we found that, in addition to tracing and tracking, we need information about people checking in and checking out at certain places. So we include other functions, which is checking in and checking out. Then later on, when people went for vaccination, to track people going for vaccination, we need to include more features. For example, so I would say the next sprint is they need to develop the features of people making appointments for vaccination, okay, and then getting information. So that's the nature. Okay, so from one team or one group of user requirements or features, then using the agile approach, we use another sprint to get another features and so on. So that's the idea of agile approach. It's not about changing of information. Okay, all right. So I hope you get the point.
So maybe basically it means a more efficient way maybe to display the information.
Yeah, it's a more efficient way of managing user requirements and then delivering what they want in a shorter time period. Okay, remember just now, if we use the waterfall approach, we get the analysis, we design, and then we develop. Then after we test, then we give it to our customer or the user. Okay, so sometimes they also forget the user requirements that they give at the earlier part of the user requirements session, right? So when we use the agile approach, we actually imagine that the system is something big. We divide it into chunks. So we develop one module, we develop, we test, we code, we test, we deliver it to the user, and then we go to the second team and so on. So that's the spirit of the agile development.
So I guess it's also more flexible than the waterfall model. Yeah, since the waterfall model is basically from start to finish, but when there's might be a problem, it's probably hard to configure it. While the agile model is more flexible to change. I see.
Yes, correct. Now you get it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chancellor.
Okay.
Very appreciate it.
Okay. We still have some time. We can still have some more question. If you don't want to
ask question, or else I will ask you question.
Okay. If you don't want to unmute yourself,
I don't mean Nabila. I mean the others. Someone ask me a question, or else I will call your names and ask you question.
Okay. If you don't want to unmute yourself, you can ask them in the chat box.
Yeah. Please feel free to write something in the chat. Anybody who want to become your friend savior, You want to save your friends from being called, you better ask questions. Fikri Radindra has done a good job helping you so that you are not being asked questions by me. Come on, who else? Just a general question. Are you studying database this semester or different semester?
We studied database first semester, if I
First
remember
semester.
correctly. First or second, I don't remember the exact.
Now
semester.
is you are in what semester?
Oh, now we are at third semester.
Third semester. Okay, so
Yes.
you meaning you have already learned about databases, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, good. Do you want me to call? Do you want me to call names? Allah Akbar. I'm just having fun, Dr. Ira.
Maybe I can ask you a question, Dr. Noorminshah,
Please.
while we are waiting for other students to ask questions or being asked. What are the biggest challenges according to your experiences in requirements gathering, especially how to deal with cultural and political dynamics in an organization or in an enterprise? Maybe you could share to us your best practice to deal with the challenges in requirements gathering.
May I know who is that asking me the question? I can't see the face. Oh, Dr. Ira.
I asked the question. Okay.
So the question that you asked is just now about the challenge, is it?
Yes.
The challenge in when using the Agile approach. And then, sorry, the second part? Political.
How you deal with, yes, political and cultural dynamics, especially in a certain organization or an enterprise.
Okay. The most difficult part, I can relate these two questions together. From experience with my team, I think the most challenges part in an Agile approach is number one, users expect everything to be done as soon as possible. Very high expectation, okay? Especially because we are developing for UTM, we are developing for the UTM itself, not by outside vendors. That's number one. Very high expectation to deliver the system as soon as possible, number one. Number two, sometimes, based on my experience too, I think sometimes it's very, although yes, as I mentioned just now, in the 12 principles, we welcome late requirements being late, although at the end of the development, for each sprint, for example. But that will be one of the major challenges, if you ask me. When we develop systems for UTM, for example, there are many stakeholders. It not only involve one unit, there are various units because the system that is developed is for the whole university. So the system is being used by, for example, Research Management Center, the Center of Community Engagement, so many units. So it is a very big challenge when we conduct the user requirements session, we sit together. It is a very major challenge when some of the people that should come do not come. So we will miss some requirements, okay? The thing is, we keep working in a university. Sometimes it's very hard to get everybody together at one certain time. Okay, I remember there's one system, but it's not developed by my team, developed by another team. There is one system being developed. after about maybe 9 months, it is being abandoned and it has to be redeveloped because it does not cater all the requirements. Okay, that's number one. Number one, it does not cater all requirements of the stakeholders. That's number one. Number two, actually, it's more of a waterfall approach rather than the agile approach. Okay, but again, the major challenge that I face is getting all stakeholders to sit together and work together to think of the user requirements. That's the major challenge, I think, from my opinion. Another main challenge is the Scrum Master or the systems analyst has to be very experienced enough to change the user requirements into it to become a system. Okay, so that's the role whereby the Scrum Master or the systems analyst has to learn the skills that they have to learn. Actually, when you teach, Dr. Ira, when you teach the students, I think there is one topic, right? What are the skills needed for the systems analyst? Communication skills and so on and so on. So those are the skills actually that are very useful during the, during your work when you work later, right? So political and cultural, so far I think I don't face much problem because number one, the systems are being developed due to top management support, due to top management direction. Okay, they direct us to develop the system, number one. Cultural wise, people already know how we develop the system. So as time goes by, the stakeholders know the way of working, the way of we work using the agile approach. Okay, so those are my response for your questions, Dr. Ira. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Any other question from the students? Okay.
Okay, maybe Tikriyoma will be the last one to ask Professor Dr. Noorminshah. Okay, you can go on with the question, Yoma.
And maybe I want to other student maybe. I guess. Oh, Iksan is okay. The last Iksan. Okay, I left this.
Okay, Sanuddin.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Muhammad Isanuddin. I'm from Information System 2, and my question is, when we want to start the process of development, we can make a plan and then we make a design. When we do as team, should we have to create more than one plan or design for the development? Because the good plan will be easy going to execution.
Sorry, I don't get your point. You mentioned about plan and design. Okay, so
Yes.
so what's the
should we create more than one plan or design?
Oh, you mean for the agile development?
Yes.
Okay, for the agile development, yes. When we take the user requirements, remember just now we have the concept of backlogs. Okay, backlogs. We have many backlogs, and for each sprint we will choose certain backlogs. Okay, so for each sprint, it has its own plan. It has its own design, and then the next sprint it has its own plan. It has its own design. Okay, so in agile approach, there are many sprints, so there are many plans and there are many designs. But that plan and design is for that particular backlog. Faham? Boleh faham tak? Bisa faham?
Yes. Second again.
Boleh So it's not that we have many plans for the whole thing, but remember we have backlogs. Backlogs refers to all the user requirements. We divide the user requirements into small pieces. So user requirements group A is sprint A. So for sprint A, we have the own planning, we have the own design, we have the own testing and so on. So then we go to sprint B, sprint C and so on. Okay, so if you ask me, do we have many plans and many designs? Yes, because the plans and designs refer to each sprint. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your answer.
Okay. Thank you, Muhammad Ihsanuddin, for saving your friends.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Dr. Noorminshah Iahad, for answering the question asked. Now that we've reached almost the end of the event, as I've mentioned before, we're in the photo session right now. But before we take pictures with all the participants, if you don't mind, it's time to take a picture with certificate as a token of appreciation. And my friend will help me to share the certificate. Sultan, please kindly share the certificate.
Okay, let me guide the photo session for this session. This photo session I will screenshot it 2 times. 1, 2, 3. Okay, once more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, kepada MC dilanjutkan lagi.
Okay, thank you. And now maybe we can stop the share screen first. Okay, please, for all the participants, if you don't mind, please kindly turn on your cameras and smile for the photo session. Okay. If you don't have any issue with your camera, please turn on your camera. Okay, well, we'll wait for a little bit more. To everyone who don't have an issue, please turn on your cameras since it's photo session time. And if all, yeah, I will wait for 30 seconds, I guess. And after we're done waiting, then my friend will lead for the photo session. Thank you.
Okay, because the participant is already on cam. Let me guide again the photo session. There are 3 slides, so let me guide for the first slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay, next slide. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay, for the last slides. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. Please, Nabila, it's time is yours.
Okay. Okay. Now we've reached the end of the event for today. A huge thank you to Professor Dr. Noorminshah Iahad for being with us today despite her busy schedule. And to all participants, thank you for attending our guest lecture today. For those who are waiting for the feedback form link, the link will be sent to the chat box right after this, and you may fill it out if necessary to get certificate. With that being said, a huge thank you to everyone who made this event possible. Stay safe and healthy until the next time. Bye all.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you learned something today. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay,
Noorminshah.
thank you,
You're
Doctor.
welcome. Okay, take care.